In this short video, I'm going to illustrate how to create a factory asset that lies just a little bit below the floor plane. So you could use this as like a subflooring, etc., and still be able to plop other things on top of it using the grid. So I'm going to start by creating a new part. And the very first thing I usually tell my students or anybody else that's working in parametrics is before you jump into anything else, you should stop and think about the controlling factors for your design, how this design can flex and change, and then make sure you lay things out accordingly. In this example, it's going to be relatively straightforward, so I'm just going to go ahead and create a couple of sizing parameters, one for the x-axis direction, one for the y-axis direction, and then a thickness. So you would then apply whatever values you need once you're set up with that, and you can also add any type of commentary you need. So for example, I may choose to add a comment size along the x-axis, Control A, Control C, Control V, and we'll just do that for the Y. That way if somebody else has to come along, they understand a little bit about what you were trying to accomplish with those parameters. I'm also going to set these as keys since I want them to be able to modify those in the published asset. So that's how we can get that scored up and ready to go. So go ahead and hit done. And now because this is factory, the z-axis is actually always up. So what I recommend doing is either making a template ahead of time or coming into your view cube, clicking on the front face, and set that as top. And then what I'll also do is I'll set up this orientation and I'll set this current view as home. So what I'm doing there is now I'm setting it up so that I understand, oh yeah, I'm working on a factory asset. Again, I usually make a template of that, but just so that you understand how that can be set up. Since this is going to be just a rectangular plate, essentially, I'm going to use a primitive to save myself a little time. So primitives are macros, so just kind of walks you through building a sketch, then to build the extrusion, all that kind of stuff without you having to click on the individual commands. Very helpful for base features and things like that. So if you come over here, if you're not familiar, you can't see your primitives, you choose this tool. I'm using Inventor 2017. And you click and you just find the primitives. That should stick it over here towards the left. And I'm just going to build a simple box. If you don't see the box, just hit the drop down and find the box icon like so. And then again, we're going to treat the z-axis as our up axis, positive z, so I'm going to use the xy plane. And I'm going to use the center point rectangle that's automatically used. And this is where I'm going to use my x size for this one and my y size when I hit tab. So I just type in x size. You can also, once you type in any character, notice the arrow at the right. That's where you could then hit the backspace and choose your parameter as well, and any name parameter that you have is accessible. Hit enter, and so now what it did was it created the size of my plate, and here's the trick. You don't have to do this, but what's helpful is I like to orient it exactly the way that I want it to show up within factory. So in this case, I actually want it to go in the negative z direction, and I'm also going to use the thickness. So if you don't see that in your list, just pick thickness and hit OK. So the idea here is that we can then use the parametrics to resize the flooring, give it different thicknesses if we've got different materials, things of that nature. So that was the first step in the process. Now we're actually going to create a factory asset from it. Again, this is going to be a really basic factory asset. There aren't going to be any connectors or anything like that, so we jump over to the Factory tab, launch the Asset Builder tool, and primarily what we're interested in is this landing surface. So if we click on the landing surface, we can choose this landing plane, or you could also choose origin geometry. So again, it's up to you. I'll use the surface of the part, but notice it flipped it the opposite direction of what I want, so I'll just flip it around. I'll hit the home button so that I'm oriented the way that I would want. And I'm also going to choose an insertion point. But before I do that, another tip that I have for building factory assets is I like to line up the X and the Y axis with the general orientation that I want for the part. So if I click on this axis and I come over to the origin folder and I choose the X axis, now the X is running in the same direction as positive X. The Y axis is running in the same direction as positive Y. I just find that that makes my life easier. So the last step to setting up this landing surface is to choose the insertion point. And if I choose the insertion point, I could pick any corner that I want. And obviously I want it to be on the top surface. Or in this case, because I use the origin geometry to my advantage, I just have to choose the center point. And so we go ahead and click OK. We can save this. I've already got it saved as a primer for some assets, so I'll just call it flooring. And now we can publish this asset. So if you're going to publish to Vault, I would say, put some kind of a comment in here that just lets you know, oh yeah, this is the first version or initial check-in or whatever you want to call it. And then we hit OK, and this comment field becomes the comment field in Vault. And so if I choose to publish the asset, hit the asset property, and then I choose Vault, I can choose the asset library, test assets, and I'll just put this in my Pete testing folder. And go ahead and hit OK. And obviously you can walk through these options as well if you want to simplify it and do other publishing things. I'm just going to leave it as is. Very cool. Finish that up. And now if I launch a sample layout, we can see how this is going to work. I'll have to refresh it quickly. Sometimes you don't have to do the refresh, but sometimes if you don't see your asset after you've published it, it might be a good idea just to try and run that in. And there's our flooring. And so if you place that here at the x-axis and then you just set your orientation, it's already lined up in the x and y axes just the way you want. You see the grid right on top of it. And if we look at the floor, you can see now that sure enough, and then if we change the thickness, set the thickness goes away from that floor grid. So again, you can do different things there. You can change the sizing of it. Let's say 120, and so now it'll be a little bit longer, a little bit narrower, that kind of a deal. So that's the basics of it, and then if you wanted to just test it out additionally, if we come back up here, I'll just pick on the old standby, the old belt conveyor. You can just grab, whoops, just grab these guys and drag them in. Let's slap a couple in here quickly. And then if you look, it does rest indeed right on that subflooring. So again, just a quick tip showing you how that can be done in the factory, how to publish that, and then ready to rock with your subflooring. So hope that helps. Thanks for watching, and have a blessed day.